Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrea Yeager, and joining us today on Little Starlight for a transformative episode is a remarkable person with a bio few, if any, can match. Laura Alden Kamm is a medical intuitive called a walking MRI for her abilities and accuracy, a best-selling author, and a spiritual teacher. Since a child, Laura grew up with heightened knowingness, and she could see the unseen. In her 20s, Laura became ill, suddenly went blind, and died. Seriously. And she's with us today. How about that? Isn't that awesome? She had a 10-hour brain surgery as part of that medical emergency. Having another chance at life, Laura, with her always present as a child, otherworldly connections, and further honed abilities, became an international respected medical intuitive and spiritual teacher. Laura has clients and students in 148 countries. Today, joining me as host, Karen Vasquez and I will name all those 148 countries. Just kidding. We will get right to hearing from fascinating Laura. Welcome, Laura. It is exciting to have you as a guest. And here's your first question.
Okay. Let's go.
We go right to it. How do you describe one of your specialties, being an integrative medical intuitive?
That is a very good first question. And the way I look at it is I am a Christian by faith, and I've also studied multiple religions. And religiosity has something to do with faith, no matter what religion or philosophy you follow. So there's the spiritual part of the work, right? It's oftentimes when a person's hurting and they're suffering, their soul, their deeper self is also suffering as well. And maybe not to the same degree the body is, but there's suffering all the way through the system of being a human being. And integration covers spirituality, energy, bioenergy, physiology, anatomy, and the mind, our psychology. So all of those are very integrated in the process that I work with, and just came about naturally. When I was haphazardly asked to take a look at something for someone, and it just started to show up for me. All of it, the energetics, the electromagnetic field that comes off the neurons of the brain and the peripheral nervous system, the enteric nervous system, which lines our entire gut system. It just all started to show up for me. And as a novice, because I was at the time, 41 and a half years ago, I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what I was seeing. And so therefore, the heavens brought doctors into my life. And it was working with the physicians that I was able to describe what I was seeing, and they would tell me what it was from an anatomy or a physiological point of view, or from a disease state point of view as well. So that's what I term integrative medical intuitive. It covers a lot of different fields for the holistic care of the individual.
That's impressive. Way over our heads, right, Karen? That's really cool stuff. Okay. So there are two continually reflective conversation points among spiritual circles. One, adults with keen sight, enlightened consciousness, and sensory awareness also commonly had them as a child. And point two, NDEs, which are near-death experiences, have often occurred in people with extraordinary abilities to connect with unseen. You are a match on both of those. Your NDE caused partial blindness, yet your super inner spiritual sight is extraordinary. For audiences to explore their own sixth sense and intuitiveness, let's take a peek at your childhood first. Midwestern values, mom worked in special ed, your dad a beloved minister. As a child, you were bright, curious, in tune with what was back then almost unspoken about, higher vibration perception, and quite tall you were. All these qualities already by kindergarten age. You were 5 foot tall in kindergarten and 5'11" by 8th grade. When someone is perceived as different for any reason, other people can struggle with understanding, and they can end up being cruel because of that lack of understanding. What helped you keep your kind, curious, service-oriented mindset, grateful nature, and spiritual abilities developing and remaining with you as you evolved into adulthood? That's not an easy thing. That's a tough thing when you have all that happening and then the world probably misunderstands you.
Right. It's very true. And I run into that with a lot of clients and friends and just people I meet. We all are born with an intuitive system. I believe intuition is a system, and the physiological system is the various parts of our nervous system. And we can talk about that later. When I was 5, this is my first memory of discerning differences. And because I could see the light around grass and my family and the dachshund, Fritzy, and just everything. And it wasn't glaring. It wasn't like a headlight in my eyesight. It was just there. It was part of the aurora of what we are. And so I remember being in the springtime. I lived in southeastern Ohio. And there was a beautiful lilac tree by the back patio, and I could see the light coming out of it. So as a 5-year-old, I stood there and said out loud, "You're from God. I'm from God. Why do you look like that? And I look like this. We both have light." And I didn't get an answer, but I was still very curious. And then I just went on and played and climbed the willow tree or something, went on the swings or something. And when I was 8, to answer your question about how did I make it through, my parents, especially my father, because his favorite word was "we." He was just that kind of a guy. And when we'd go for drives in the country on Sunday, which was what we always did, Dad and the kids, he would want to take us on a shortcut, which would be 3 to 4 hours. And it was just magical. It was fabulous. So we went to Europe when I was 8. Dad had a sabbatical, and Mom was smart enough to not let him go without us. So when we stood in cathedrals, I would see the energy of the prayers, not only of the people speaking them in the moment, but what felt like ancient prayers all coalesce, not just contained within the church, but very vibrant, moving, dynamic structures. And I would see angels. And I'd elbow my dad. I remember very clearly, we were in Notre Dame. I elbowed my dad and I said, "Wow, look at all the angels." His response was, "Wow, yeah." So I didn't have any discouragement there. And I have to laugh because even though we didn't talk about it, when I was in 6th grade and at 5, 10 and a half, my parents gave me a Kreskin ESP board game for Christmas. And it's like, what? I think back at that, like somehow they must have known something because we didn't have language. We didn't talk about it. I knew when the dog needed to go out 5 minutes before anybody else did. I knew when the milkman was coming back then. The milkman actually delivered milk. I knew when things were coming. I said, "Mom, George, the paper man was coming up the street. It's Friday. He needs paid." She goes, "Okay, but he's not here yet." I said, "He'll be here in about 4 minutes." And this is just the way I lived my life. And my sister often called me a liar, but then when somebody would show up, she'd go to the kitchen or something. So it was strange. And I didn't get a lot of pushback from the family. Pushback came in school later, mostly I'd say in high school when I tried to fit in, which is not easy for anybody anyway. But it wasn't easy when I knew things were going to happen, and people just at that time, because everybody, when you're 15 and 16, people think all kinds of things about each other, and they just step away, and then they lean in because they want to know. They're curious, but then they'd step away, and it just went back and forth for years. And then I kind of shut it down, went on with my life, went to school, got married, had 2 beautiful children. And it was an architecture school in Indiana State when I became ill. And 11 days later, I was blind and flatlined in an ambulance. There it is.
Here's something that is interesting, because what's ingrained in young children, those early years, is often what is important to establish adult behavior. And yet spiritual abilities and intuition, those often go dormant in people after childhood. So additionally, people with heart awakening and soul awakening experiences, they traditionally conform to an easier to access genuine nature of joy with gratitude. So what qualities help you as a medical intuitive and spiritual teacher, and can they be learned by anyone? Because as you mentioned, importantly, for audiences out there, everyone has intuition. We're born with intuition. So you kept yours continued as a child, and often other people's go dormant. So what qualities do you have, and can they be learned?
They can be learned because they're just asleep. It's like any learned behavior. if we have the wiring inside to finish our projects, and yet we're told to stand down, to don't finish that yet, do that later, something like that, we can develop the skill of procrastination, because that's a learned behavior. Usually when I'm doing my work with people, it's very interesting that oftentimes the body will relieve different age ranges, or sometimes a very specific age and month and even day sometimes. But it's usually around that time where we develop hero worship, from 8 to 12, when we start to project outside of ourselves, that external locus of control, when we're paying attention more to what's outside of us than what's inside of us. And we go into hero worship and, superheroes, Marvel, everything, other people, people that we look up to, things like that. They become our heroes. And we forget that we have a hero inside of us. So what you can do, there are many things you can do. So one of them is prayer. I'm a firm believer in prayer, meditation, mindfulness-based meditation. I'm a mindfulness-based meditation teacher and stress reduction, and also brain science. And so that is probably one of the keenest ways, both prayer and a mindfulness-based meditation, to get back to yourself. And in a fast-paced world with a lot of tech, with Twitter brains we all have, or X brains, I should say now, we have to slow down the mind. We have to come back inside ourselves. There's a syndrome I see in people, and I call it walking Buddha head syndrome. When people are really smart, they're really bright, their acuity, their problem-solving skills, their prefrontal cortex just thin slices problems, boom, 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 done. They're puzzle makers. And they have a tendency to be also extremely empathic. And that's part of the nervous system too, that felt sense when we know somebody's staring at us, that gaze perception, as it's called. We know when somebody's staring at us. So we just have to tune back in. And the only way to do that is pull in and breathe, enter back into the mind, enter back into the heart, enter back into your body. And meditation and prayer are really the best tools to do that. And another thing that helps a lot is to get out in nature. Nature is the catalyst to remind us of our own true nature. And even if you live in a city, you can find a park, you can find a tree along the street to just be around. Japanese forest breathing, forest bathing has science behind it, and it supports our nervous system and our immune system, the chemicals released by trees. Getting out in nature helps us find ourselves again. And being with close friends that you resonate with, Not everybody gets us, and that's okay. It's not supposed to be that way. We all conceptualize differently, but if you find people that conceptualize the same as you, believe the same as you, have the same heart, when you get together and you feel together, you get together and you feel the love and you feel the laughter and you feel the joy sometimes before you even see each other, that's somebody you resonate with. That can help bring you back to your own feelings and your own intuitive system. Remember, your nervous system is part of your intuitive system, and we often get hit in the belly. So when you get that feeling in the belly, whether it's uncomfortable or it's like, yeah, that feels really good, something fun's happening, pay attention to that. Every time you do, it builds the strength of that radar, the strength of that system. And then the classic still small voice within starts to arise. And you can differentiate that from the chatter of your mind. And when you do, and when you listen and trust it, that's when things happen. That's when miracles can happen in your life.
Okay, that was pretty fabulous. So let's put that on a billboard for everyone to drive by and learn from. Okay, we're continuing. I put in my notes: calm and soothing personality, joyful wit, strong intellect, kind heart, patient resolve, steadfast determination, analytical, medical knowledge, wisdom, vast wisdom. Those I noticed when I took your 5-week medical intuitive course. Karen's looking at me going, wait, you learned all those? No, this is what she is. That's what I noticed with Laura. So to provide audiences relief and encouragement, If you had to scale what influenced you most as a child and as an adult, would they be experiences of laughter and love or ones of tears and overcoming challenges? And the reason I bring this up is sometimes people experience they're just struggling and they're struggling and they're struggling and they're like, you know what? This sucks, and they go deeper into that. And so you've had this life where you still are partially blind. You see half of us, you see half a face, half a mountain, like your children, you see half their faces, your grandchildren, half their faces. To read an email, which I learned out way after I sent you a bunch of emails, you only see like 3 letters at a time. That's hard. Like, it's a technology world. So we're seeing a lot and reading a lot, things like that. And you're always really positive, and you always have all those qualities I mentioned. And so I just thought maybe it would help for people, because people might look at you and go, well, yeah, she's happy. She's had a lot of laughter. She had a great family, and you did. But did you learn more from the tougher experiences, or did you learn more from the laughter, love experiences?
I actually think I learned more from the tougher experiences. Those were the bigger teachers for me. And because I had a fun, loving, playful parents, my mother was very structured, but not draconian at all. She did everything she could to make our lives better and more adventurous. And the gift they gave us was the gift of travel from a very young age. So I had all that security. And then there's our father, who would sing and joke and laugh, and he was the bear that we'd all attack when he'd walk in the door, after work. So we would roll around on the floor. So I had all that in my body, in my cells, in my heart. And so when the tough stuff came, no matter what age, that was always there in some fashion, long distance or in person as a child, to be comforted. And they also made us stand on our own. They knew we could figure it out. And that's what they would say. They would listen and they say, you can figure this out. I'm not sure what to say right now, but I know you have the answer. So in that regard, they really helped foster my own digging in. But it is at the most painful moments of dying. At one point, it's all peace. And it's like, yeah, I'm going home. But up until that point, because it took 11 days to die, it was really painful. I'm laughing now because it's like what's underneath the laughing is, oh God, don't do it to me again. But it was, I know I'm going to die someday, but hopefully at 106 and just in my sleep. That's the program now. But it was like having a locomotive parked on my brain, because I had brain abscesses and spinal meningitis. And that's a tough, painful, a tough way to go, a painful passing. But I learned so much because I was awake. I was awake through the whole thing. And I got to see the miracle of what it's like to start leaving your body. I learned how to cope with indescribable pain. And I got resourceful. There was a point in time, because the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. There wasn't an MRI or a CAT scan at the hospital I was at in a small town. And so when I needed to use the restroom, I would push my legs off the bed, grab the IV stand, and it would throw me up against the wall. And then I'd scurry along the wall. And thank goodness the architect on the hospital built cantilever doors. So the main door to the room and the restroom door were the same door. So I'd grab the door handle, grab my IV stand, and hurl my way into the bathroom and land on the seat. And use the restroom. And I'd look at myself in the mirror, and I was a really interesting shade of gray by then, and my eyes were bulging from my head. But I do that. I would get up and do things. I figured out how to keep moving my body, even though my body was dying. And at the point where I couldn't do that anymore, I watched light come from my body. And it would rise up from my legs, in different places from my legs. And I just watched it. It would be different colors. It was like my own aurora borealis. And it wasn't phenomenological in the sense of hallucinations. It really wasn't, because it was the same thing I saw as a child. And so it was the same thing I see now. So it wasn't a brain thing, it was a soul thing. And I've thought long and hard about that. So when we have these tough times, we all fall in the ditch. We want to stay in the middle of the road, but sometimes life throws us in the ditch. And so you get to learn the ditch. That's what I did when I was dying. I got to learn what dying was about in detail, because I was going to be an architect. So I have this structural analytical mind, and I didn't miss a trick as much as I could not miss one anyway. I tried my best to pay attention to every single detail that was going on inside my body. And that's what I do when I land in a trench. I pay attention to everything that's going on, analyzing it. I don't analyze the socks off of it. I just observe now more than anything. A state of awareness, a state of observation, understanding where my emotions were, knowing that I couldn't do anything about the pain in the moment. Not even medication was helping. So I knew where I was. And I think that's a really important thing for people to do for themselves, is when you're in a tough spot, where are you? What's all going on? Our minds can get really emotional and fly us all over the place and blame this person or that person or this behavior in us. Or, I messed up. I shouldn't have done this. That's just picking on yourself. That's not observing in a way that will move your consciousness and move your choices out of the ditch, because we want to get back in the middle of the road and keep moving. That's life. Ditches in the middle of the road. Ditch, middle of the road, as best we can. And that's not easy. That's not always easy.
But it can be done. Can be done. Okay, good.
Absolutely. Every minute, every decision, just keep walking. Listen to yourself. Keep walking. Trust yourself. That's the biggest thing. Trust yourself.
Perfect. All right. You have been sought out for your expertise by major hospitals, famous doctors, medical research programs, healthcare workers, people from all walks of life. Your career has spanned 40 years, scanning and reading people, buildings, companies, animals, even land water tables with phenomenal success. If you wanted, you could scan Karen and I and audience members just by our talking and know what's in our hearts, minds, how our body is functioning, even what we ate today. Anyone interested can benefit and transform their own life from your teachings. Karen had a medical journey quite different, but also very involved, with a 2% chance of survival from childhood cancer. Karen is also a miracle person. Karen is excited to continue this intriguing conversation with you. You're up, Karen.
Hi, Karen. Hi.
It is a pleasure meeting you. And I did my research and I was like, wow, she can do all of this. Like, how does she exist? I read that you have this special ability to see structures and colors that are outside the normal visual spectrum. Is this part of your everyday life, or are you able to turn it off and on as necessary?
That's a very good question. It is part of my everyday life, and I've learned to have a dimmer switch that I can dial it down. I test myself by living in different parts of the country, and it's fascinating to be in a subway in New York at rush hour and look at all the plethora of colors around everyone and the compaction of their energy. Everybody's really tight and in energetically as well as physically. And then when you ride the tube or the train at another time and there's lots of space, everybody's field is just out. They're radiating. They're usually calm. And I haven't been in the city for a while either, but that's my experience when I lived there. So yeah, I have a dimmer switch, but it's always there. And I'm used to it. I'm so used to it. To me, that is life. That is the way life is perceived. That is the structure of life. It's the electromagnetics that we have on this planet. We do live on a magnet. Our bodies are electrical. The heart produces electricity and electromagnetics. So does the brain. And that's actually really fun for me. I love it. One of the things I do is I get to go into people's hearts visually, intuitively. And usually it's when I'm in the cells of the apex or the ventricle walls, the lower part of the heart, the base of that beautiful heart. And I go into the cells and it's like, oh, this is a teacher. This is an author. This is this. Oh, you should be a photographer. You should be an artist. And the individual, in this case, had myocarditis and was an attorney. And they were not happy at all in their heart or in their body. And I got an email later, 6 months or so, I quit. I'm a photographer. I'm doing great. So when we listen inside, we can find our own truth, our own path, our own way. One of the things I always teach, it is the premise, it is the foundation of what I share with people, is that we're born, each of us, with our own methods, our own pathway for those methods, and our own way of walking that path. And that's where our gifts lie. And our gifts are all within us, but I literally see, hear, feel, know the gifts inside people's hearts. And what else is entertaining and really fun and really beneficial from an analytical point of view when I'm doing an assessment. And let me say this. As a medical intuitive, my job is not to diagnose. I do not diagnose. I do not prescribe. I do not do any of that. I observe, I assess, I discern, and I report, and I refer. That's my job. I refer people to the medical system, usually because people come to me with all kinds of things. But to go back to what I was saying, when I go into the brain and I look at synaptic function and neurology, the synaptic function, the chemical function of synaptic gap usually shows up like a blue-white lightning to me. When I'm with someone who's extremely creative and hiding it, especially, they may be acting in it and doing creative work, but when they're hiding it, it comes out like I'm in a Disney movie, like I'm in a Pixar movie. And it's just these beautiful array of colors that are casting off that electrochemical charge. And it's fascinating to me. I learned so much by this work about the beauty of who we are as human beings. And then if I dare turn on the news, it's like, oh, shoot, what's going on here? So my prayer for everybody is like, get inside, trust yourself, have faith in yourself and whatever you believe in, and be kind to other people. But yeah, I'm used to it. It's a beautiful world, like Louis Armstrong said. I believe it was Louis that sung that song. It's a wonderful world, but it's still a beautiful world. Beautiful world.
Oh, wow. And how have you managed to dim it? Like how, I don't know,
It's a mental thing of perception. It's like I'm looking here and then I look over here. And then when I want it back, I look over here. It really is a perceptual thing in my brain that I'm able to focus and not focus. It's like I've developed an aperture for it. And I actually think everybody's got the aperture, because it's the aperture that we close to stop seeing. Like, I don't want to see this anymore, or I can't feel this way anymore. I don't want to know that. Those lenses of intuitive perception are driven by the nervous system. Everything happens in the nervous system, and then it comes up into the brain, and then our magnificent brains take those signals and put them into our lenses of perception, whether it's cognitive or intuitive. And the melting of critical thinking and intuition, I hope, I pray, I'm working on it, is the next step in humanity. Because if we keep our critical thinking going, which a lot of it is kind of slipping away, and merge it with our intuition, then we can move forward and be really reasonable human beings on a planet and really help each other, help ourselves, our family, our loved ones, and help other people.
Oh, now, these colors that you see, are they all over our body, or just like from the heart, brain?
They are everywhere. They're intercellular. They're connected, so they're intracellular to each cell. Every system typically has its own system of color depending on what's going on. It's in the field. It's in the collective field. It's everywhere. We have electromagnetic pulses everywhere all the time. And so as an individual with a nervous system that is highly electrical, it changes with mood, it changes with environment, it changes with thought. Now, there is a point of homeostasis and a pattern that most people have. And we all know this. You know when you're around somebody who's always grumpy, right? You know, okay? That doesn't mean their field is dark and icky. It's not. It's just they're grumpy. That's their nature. So we have clues as to perhaps what's going on. So one of the ways people start observing this type of, I was going to say phenomenon, and it is phenomenological, but it is also truth because we are electromagnetic. You can have a friend stand against a white wall. No pictures, no curtains, no nothing. And then you step back about 10, 20 feet, and you soften your eyes. You don't close your eyes, but you soften them. And you just stare above their head and see what happens. Now, an ophthalmologist may say that's just a phenomenon of the neurology and perception in your eyes, but that's okay. If they want to say that, that's all right. I just have a different perspective and see what happens. All you can do is see what happens. All you can do is that. See what happens. But it's everywhere. It's everywhere all around us. And it depends on disease state. One of the things I do is I track what I call directional movement. Where is it going? Is it in stasis? Is it coming in? Is it going out? What's going on? And that's true with the different colors too. They're always ebbing and flowing. We're like our own northern lights. So we're amazing. We're amazing.
So as we are sitting here, Andrea and you're actually seeing our colors.
I'm looking at the camera, but I can do this and see your colors. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I wish I could be you for one day.
Okay, so I'll ask this question for you because I thought this was coming from you with your way. Okay, so do you see, and you don't have to answer this, or do you see anything particular color-wise with Karen right now at this very moment?
we will because we're here together. There's a conglomerate. Okay, even though we're in different parts of the country, there's a conglomerate around Karen that holds energy for all of us. What's striking about you is, I don't know if you remember. Your heart energy reminds me of a candy cane, and let me explain what I mean by that. One of the multicolored candy canes. So let me explain what I mean by that. When I look at it, the angle of incidence of light that comes out of your body comes out from the north. I was going to say, well, it is the north part of the heart, but it's the upper right atrium, and it comes out as this thin little beautiful light, and then it just goes out. It may come out maybe like 3 millimeters, and then it just showers out like a meteor shower. And the colors are an iridescent white, kind of a subdued chartreuse, nothing you'd see on an emergency vehicle, but a subdued chartreuse, which is yellow and green. There is a beautiful, rich purple around you, all over you. Have you written your book yet, Karen?
My book?
Yes.
About what?
Because floating in your field, this will be interesting to your audience, but it's not just what's in our body I look at. I was in your heart, right? So I'm in and around your heart, and all of a sudden a structure in your field, approximately 36 degrees left of center around hip height. There's a book there. It's your story, my dear. It's your story that will move so many people. The beliefs that you have, the strength that you have in here. Now your heart's just like, it's just lovely and just expanding. So don't worry, you don't have to write War and Peace. Not lengthy. It's on the big side of a novella, which is around 150, 160 pages. People need to hear from you. That's part of your job. That's part of your job. Okay. So, and it's not hard to do it. Just write your story and then take pieces of it. And those are the leading edges of your chapter and the lessons that you learned there, because you learned a lot. Talk about resilience and resourcefulness. And those who love you in spirit and walk with you, that go you along, in a kind way. It's like, go over here, Karen, go over there, Karen. So that's an important piece for you. So if you haven't started yet, consider that. Consider it, please. Other people will benefit from what you have to share. You're on a podcast here. So when you get off the podcast, take a moment, take some breaths into your chest, into your heart, and then move that concentration of your mind up to your throat. Because it's in the back of the throat where you have what I call a little cosmic hairball. And that's where the restriction is. Like, nobody wants, I'm just glad to be here. Nobody wants to hear, what do I have to write about? I don't have time. I don't know what to say. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's your story. Of course you know what to say. So take your breath up there and just hold some grace up in your throat from your heart and see what happens. And then go write. Go write anyway. Even if you write, I don't know what to write that first and then keep writing.
So Karen, I'm going to ask you this because I've known you since a child. So I've known your story and you've had heartache recently with the loss, the tragic loss of your brother. Do you feel like your brother is encouraging you to share your story and maybe share a bit about him?
Hopefully.
Okay. So I'll keep going. I thought that was coming from you, and it seemed like that's okay. It's a good thing. So we'll work on that after. Okay. Like we'll let you have your candy cane heart for the holidays, and then your candy cane heart will come into January, and we'll work on that together. Okay. And share with the world your beautiful story, and also your brother, how he.
Let me know if you need anything. I'll be happy to help you on the side, on the down low. I'd be honored.
Okay, so I'll step in while your tears are going. That's okay. Keep the tears. So we are about to go far deeper on part 2, even deeper than this with Laura. The very next question Laura will answer on part 2. Karen, just to give audiences and Laura what is coming next, will you ask your next question? So Laura, no answering it right now. Okay. It goes into part 2. We just want audiences to go, okay, this is kind of where we're going to be going on this episode 2. So go ahead, Karen, would you share that question?
Sure. So I actually read on one of the websites that I came across. I think that website was Awaken. And some of the main topics, they had the foundation of teachings. And listed under they had personal healing and transformation, energy medicine, direct experience with God, and medical intuition. However, the one I was most intrigued about was direct experience with God. Now, I'm Christian too, so would you please, I wanted to you to elaborate more on how to help a person to have a direct experience with God. I want to learn more about that. And also, I'm also curious about the energy medicine, and I want to learn how does that work too?
No answering yet. Okay, drum roll for the second episode. So more coming. But before Laura answers those special questions in part 2, to close out part 1 of this episode, we want to make sure that you know that one of Laura's published books is called Intuitive Wellness, Using Your Body's Inner Wisdom to Heal. Laura also has a podcast called The Voice of Intuition. And Karen was mentioning she's already been following you on Instagram and watching those videos. So everyone watching and listening to part 1, thank you for joining us. Sending you love and excited for you to join us on part 2. And that is where we'll take a deep dive into the unknown, unseen world with Laura Alden Kamm, providing insights on what you can do to increase your own intuition and find your own inner power. So blessings.